Alrighty, it is time to stop hitting snooze and awaken to a life worth being. The fun and inspiring podcast that dives deep into what makes life truly fulfilling. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, a self-proclaimed badass transformational life coach for women over 40. Join me as I explore the extraordinary journeys of ordinary people who've transformed their lives from the inside out. Tune in weekly to uncover the secrets to smashing through your perceived limits and creating a life that's not just well lived, but totally worth being. Alrighty, here we are, and I am here today with the Holmes. Holmeses? How is it? Brittany and Ed Holmes. You may remember them from my very first episode. I had them on board to interview me for my first episode, and they were awesome. And I promised that I would have them back to unpack their journey. And here they are with full suitcases ready to unpack on today's episode. Let's unpack everything, shall we?
Perfect. It could be like a live therapy session.
Oh, all right. Everybody settle in. Here we go.
Just kidding.
You don't have enough Kleenex stuff.
Yeah, not enough time.
Now, if you remember, Brittany and Ed are also coaches, and they have a very specific brand of coaching that they have created. And they will be telling us all about that, which I'm really excited to unpack. So Brittany and Ed not only are my dear friends, they're also my neighbors. And as I said before, they're coaches. I don't know what realm would you put yourself in, the wellness coach realm?
Yeah. Mindset, wellness.
Cool.
All the things. We'll kind of
all the things. They are all the things to all people. No, they're not. They're very specific. Well, let's just hop in. Brittany and Ed, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. And I would just love to hear a little bit about what brought you to coaching. I mean, and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. We coach because we know what it feels like to get really stuck.
Yeah. So, we were stuck for many years.
Yeah. In our own ways, but very similar outcome. We both were raised in emotionally eating households where food was a great way to regulate or celebrate any emotion. So or numb.
Just anything involved with feelings.
Yeah. I joke that there's no emotion that gravy couldn't make better. Right. So if we were sad, we ate. Happy, we ate. And the weight, like, just for my own context, I was 130 pounds heavier at my heaviest.
Yeah. I think you walked in at 360.
My heaviest, I was 360.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and it was a real external indicator of how jammed up I felt inside. I really didn't have tools to regulate and process what I was feeling. And then food being my primary addiction, I also spent 2 decades really addicted to pornography, about 5 years struggling with alcohol. And so anything I could do that took the edge off of what I was feeling, I would use. And out of that, got really stuck, right?
Yeah.
Because
and sick.
Yeah, and sick.
Yeah.
Like rivers flow, and then like lakes end up having dead spaces in them, right? Because the water is not flowing. And or another way we heard it said is there's a difference between a road and a cul-de-sac. And my life had really become a cul-de-sac, right? Like I just felt myself hitting this dead end repeatedly.
Yeah, driving around in circles and
yeah. Or a way we teach it, and analogies are abundant among coaches, right? But the one that's been really resonating with our clients and with us is we were on the hamster wheel, just kind of feeling like we're sprinting and running. We have this it was really unique, struggling the way we were, but then also being real high performers. So like
we can mask it really well.
Yeah, I'm a very high performing addict. So I rose through the ranks at my corporate job. I worked for this company called the Great Wolf Lodge. I was one of the fastest rising managers in company history. Ended up starting to help the corporate training team and was making good money for a single dude living in the small town I was living in. And ended up going on staff at the church that Brittany was working at And Brittany was a successful entrepreneur before we even met. So even with the lack of these tools, there were things still happening.
Yeah.
And yet in no way were we living up to our potential.
No, and we had been married for a couple of years, and our backgrounds fed into each other because we both came from similar types of households and in regards to how we dealt with food. And
did you have a lot of gravy at your house as well, Brittany?
Pizza.
Yeah.
Pizza, popcorn.
It makes everything better, and
so
especially
much popcorn.
Gravy on it, right? Oh, popcorn.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
dude.
My family had could make specialty popcorn. I still think about it to this day because I can't eat corn anymore, but that's another story.
So this
popcorn. Okay, sorry. I digress.
It's part of our story, but it's interesting that people meet us now. Like we're CrossFitters, we do endurance events, fitness and health is a big part of our life now. And people
cook pretty much everything we eat.
And people don't know the older versions of us, right? So I'll be around and people will be talking about some, shameful treat that they figured out how to make or whatever. And I'll be like, that's good, but this is actually, have you had this? And they're like, how did you know to combine those? And it was like, I had a whole nother life. Yeah, we joke often that the thing we were best at the longest was being fat. We know how to put on weight from eating really bad but delicious food. Yeah.
But what I was saying is we were married for a couple of years and had really, all of those things had started to compound because of both of our backgrounds. And we just reached this point where we felt so stuck and frustrated. And we were like, we don't care what we have to do. We've got something's going to change. And
I was curious about that. Like how, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff to overcome and to be stuck with. And it's like, then the two of you come together and it sounds like it just sort of compounded everything.
Yeah. It wasn't like we came together initially and then it all started improving right away.
It sounds like it kind of went worse, right?
Yeah. It was a few years where our health got significantly worse. I didn't realize it at the time. I was already dealing with some pretty significant autoimmune issues that didn't show up fully until a couple years later. And Ed had several really severe sleep apnea and several other things going on. And so...
Well, and for me too, so my grandpa was big my whole life. And he had diabetes and then Alzheimer's, which... The data is starting to prove more and more. They call it type 3 diabetes. There is a direct correlation between diabetes and Alzheimer's. And so watching my grandpa lose his independence and watching him start remembering people or stop remembering people that were very important to him and losing memories and formative experiences, the ability to read, to engage with life. I just watched him become a shell of himself and close in on himself.
Well, and that was a really pivotal, we lost your grandpa, right when we started taking steps to improve our health and our life. So that was a very...
Yeah. The other really humbling thing is my grandpa, got diagnosed with diabetes later on in life. He was in his 50s.
Right.
He lost a significant amount of weight, completely changed his nutrition, started working out. Even with those changes, he still ended up with Alzheimer's. And so the realization that I'm wrestling with and messing with a ticking time bomb and I'm taking my health for granted and I'm not stewarding it. And so he, in a way, was a blessing to me to watch, no, this is something that's worth taking care of now. And it's important to tackle now. Yeah.
And it's great when we can, in when you interviewed me talking about my mom, we're kind of predisposed to some things because that's how we're brought up, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's food, whether it's whatever. And we're like, well, this is what we know. Right. And then you've got to realize, okay, I can change this. I have the ability to change it, but I need to want to change it. And then you have to figure out how to change it. So how did you start to make those changes together?
So
it was coaching.
Yeah, I was going to say, like I said, we reached this point where we were like, we don't know what we can do, but we have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And we just so happened to be the ones that were put in charge of hosting a guest speaker that we had on a Sunday at the church we were both working at the time. And his name was Ronnie Doss, and he was a coach who worked with companies like NASA and BlackRock and like big names. Like the fact that he was there speaking at our church makes no sense in light of what he was already doing in his career. But he had a personal connection with our senior pastor. And so he was there on a Sunday and we got to host him, and we asked him after he spoke that Sunday. I just felt this like prompting, like I have to ask him if he would be willing to sit down with us for a couple minutes. And so he said yes, which was already a shock. And we sat down and just started having conversation with him. And it was a pivotal, like life-changing moment for us where he spoke to some things that we had been wrestling with for a long time, but haven't been able to put words to yet. And as a result of that conversation, we asked him what would need to be true for us to work with him as a coach, to receive coaching from him. And we literally had like pennies to offer him compared to what he was billing out for at that time. And he still agreed to work with us, which is such a blessing. Like our lives are forever changed because of his generosity. And it was through those, I mean, we worked with him for 3 or 4 years.
Well, he said in that conversation, I will not work with you unless you do group-based coaching, group-based fitness 5 days a week. Because if you're not pushing yourself physically, you won't push yourself mentally. And then you'll say my coaching doesn't work. Yeah. And I know it does. Right.
And I was so mad in that initial conversation. I was like, who does this guy think he is? Like,
telling me what to do.
Who is he to say that I have to go and like do this group-based workouts and all this stuff? And I'm so thankful that he was that honest with us and like upfront about what would need to be true to work with him, because that led us to joining our CrossFit gym, CrossFit Devotion, who we've been members at for almost 8 years now. And that community changed everything for us, because we went from being around people who only socialized around food and like late night, happy hour trips after services and blah, blah, and events and stuff, to working out and like moving our bodies in this group of people of all different fitness levels, like all different, stages of life. And I mean, it literally changed our life.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point when anyone is trying to do something, make some sort of a change, whether it's, quitting alcohol or smoking or trying to lose weight, you need to not only change your own mindset, but you sometimes have to change who you're hanging around with, right? 100%. Because a lot of people, your good buddies, they don't want you to change. They don't want you to do better. And it sounds weird to say that, but it's true. So sometimes it's like, okay, they may not be as supportive as you would like, because guess what? If you do something to improve yourself, then they may feel not so great about themselves, right? I don't exactly know what the psychology is behind it, but they may or may not want you to succeed. So you're hanging around with a bunch of different people who are already on some sort of journey, that you're like, okay, they want to bring you along and lift you up rather than keep you where you are. So that's a great point about that.
Well, it was,
go ahead.
It was fascinating. And this is something we teach now, is not only do I have a comfort zone, but I surround myself with people who are comfort zone familiar, right? And so my behaviors facilitate other people's behaviors, right? So then we have learned to leverage the human desire to belong. So when we showed up at the CrossFit gym, belonging looked like bringing food to a potluck where we're all eating and then back home at 8 p.m. because we have 6 a.m. class the next morning, right? Belonging looks like walking into the gym and saying, we have this disgusting workout we just came up with, you should do it. And if I'm not regularly showing up and working out and at that level of fitness, then I can't do that with the people I want to belong with, right? So like leveraging my desire for belonging has continued to help me level up. And I constantly find myself in these spaces where it's like, in no way do I have the credentials or the experience or whatever it is to be in this group. And yet I know this group has something I need for my development. So I will learn what the standards are and how to fit in. And out of that, I become a better version of myself, right? And when I compare that with what we found in our CrossFit community, which was they accepted me how I was. And by simply living to the standards of the community, I got better.
Yeah.
So they weren't being egotistical. They weren't being prideful. They were simply just doing what they do. And that's exactly what we needed. So we're a big believer in this idea that internal self-discipline always starts with external accountability. And it's not always someone saying, hey, did you do X, Y, and Z today? A lot of times external accountability is the people I've surrounded myself with live here.
Yeah. So I either raise the water level or I sink. Or
I opt out.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not forcing that on me. They're being consistent with how they live and I want to fit in. So I'm going to raise my water level as well.
Yeah. If you want to improve, be around people that are, and I won't say better than you, but that have achieved a certain level of success in the area that you want to be in.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're never going to be challenged. And, I always, joke and say that, if you're not being challenged in wherever you are, you need to find a different place to be. And I think that's exactly what you guys were alluding to. Yeah. Be around people that are going to lift you up. But I'd love to talk about, so, you found a coach that fit your needs and was willing to work for you, and with you and challenge you to get to that next level, whatever that was, and continue to improve and, leave kind of those old habits behind, step outside of them, step outside your comfort zone, find a new comfort zone that was challenging and rewarding at the same time. And then when did you decide, and it sounds like you were already doing a little bit of this within the church environment. Tell us about going out on your own and creating your own coaching practice.
Yeah. So we were on staff at the church together for about 7 years. Member of the executive team. I, in essence, was our COO and Brittany was the CMO and did anything marketing, communications, operations, human resources went through us, right? And we felt like our time there was finished. And we started to consider what would transition look like. I talked to a recruiter and found out what my nonprofit role would make in the for-profit world. And I was like, that sounds phenomenal.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And started to apply for jobs. We both did. And
we had been talking for a while at that point, considering just feeling like it's time. We have actually a desire now. We had grown to the point where we felt confident enough of we want to create something that's ours.
Yeah. So none of the jobs we applied for came to fruition. I do some nonprofit work in Uganda. I went to Uganda for a couple of weeks. Wow. Peak COVID, which was not the smartest thing I've ever done.
They shut the country down 3 days after he got home.
Yeah. Anyways, Brittany took some vacation time with her mom and really spent time in prayer. What do we feel like God's asking us to do? And it became really clear that we were going to start a gym. So our fitness transformation had deeply inspired other people. So,
and we had already have people at the time were asking to come to our home and work out with us. Like if we would take them through workouts. So it became this really fun thing. Our friends would come to our home gym and we would take them through these disgusting CrossFit workouts. And
hey, I just joined CrossFit today. So there you have it.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome to the tribe.
Yeah. And so we got certified as nutritionists. I got my CrossFit level 1. We invested some money to convert our garage into a gym.
We invested a chunk of money.
And opened up the gym. And then about a year in realized, man, really what got us excited was the conversations before and after the workouts,
Oh,
where we're talking through, which is true for our story. Like the consistency that we've been able to apply to our fitness journey had more to do with what's going on between the ears than it did that we were going and working out, right? Like it was the stories
that I held about myself
and the world, right? Like my beliefs about myself and the world were the things that robbed me of consistency. And so as we're having those conversations, we're like, this is our jam. This is what's unique. There's so many phenomenal gyms in our area. We don't need to run a gym. The thing we offer in this space that's unique is our journey of personal development. So we shut down the gym and sold all of our equipment, kept some for ourselves. We still have a very bougie home gym, which I'm very thankful for.
Friends still come work out.
And then started speaking and coaching in a more generic kind of life coach way.
We focused specifically on the 4 quadrants of whole health. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So we would work with people in each of those domains.
Started working with teams, speaking, executives, and then over the last year have gotten really clear that what we're passionate the most is helping people get unstuck to create a meaningful life. That's our broad commitment and mission. And specifically within that, we work with people on how to relate to stress. So stress,
you can actually thrive in a high demand life.
Yeah. So we love, it's so interesting in our speaking engagements, high performers are attracted to us. And generally what they ask is, what do I need to do to get unstuck? And what we spend most of our coaching doing is helping people realize who they need to be to get unstuck. And so for most people, the next level has little to do with doing more, and it has a whole lot more to do with clarity on who you want to be and how you want to show up.
Space in your life.
So it's a cool leverage of,
No, you talked about creating space and being stuck and also stress. So my question is, does stress create the stuckness, or does the stuckness create stress, or are they
mutually reinforcing? So back to the hamster wheel analogy.
Right.
I'm going to mix hamster wheels and sponges, and we'll time together. You'll see in a second. It'll make sense.
Okay.
When I got really clear that stress is what I wanted to speak on, I was touting myself as a stress and performance coach, right? And so I would come in and speak, and I would spend a little bit of time talking about stress and what stress is, but then I'd spend a lot of time talking about how to fuel your performance. And I'm watching these rooms I'm speaking in, and their eyes are glazing over, and I realize, they're dry sponges. So they've already squeezed everything they know how to squeeze, and they're squeezing harder. Right.
And we know.
Is that because they're high performance people?
Yeah, because the lie the lie is that if I can figure out the next trick, get the next planner, then I can get another 15, 20, 30 minutes in my day, and then I can be more productive. But you don't have anything left, and a dry sponge just literally pushes water around, right?
It can't absorb anything.
So that's become one of my favorite definitions of being burnt out is I'm just pushing stuff around. Nothing's effective.
It's
Nothing's
actually being
efficient.
repelled from me.
It's actually being repelled from me. So when we can create space and start getting some water back in our sponge, now we have something to absorb and to start. So when I have another 20 minutes of my day, I have something emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually to give to it. So now, hamster wheels. Hamster wheels are the dryer cycle of our soul. So, and the promise of the hamster wheel is if you just run a little bit harder for a little bit longer, then you can finally get off. And I don't know if you've seen those GIFs of the hamster who's like running, and the hamster gets off, but it's because the wheel ends up going faster than they can keep up with it.
So and it shoots him out the side.
Right? And so we're wrung out, we're exhausted, we're in essence this dried out sponge, but we're telling ourselves just one more step. But that wheel is designed, every step speeds up the wheel.
Yep.
Right? So before I know it, this thing is spinning faster than I have the capacity to stay on it. And I'm not going anywhere. And so sponges and hamster wheels. So what we do is we help people pause, get off the hamster wheel, get some water in their sponge, by getting clear on who would you need to be to sustainably, efficiently, and effectively do what you know you need to do to be successful. So like we work a lot in real estate offices, and most real estate people know what they need to do. Mm-hmm. It's that they don't have the consistency, the discipline, and the focus to do it.
They're all jammed up.
They're all jammed up. That's a being.
Speaking of that, yes, exactly.
So that's a beingness thing, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, stress. So stress is a story. It's a story I can change. It's the story I'm used to telling myself. Stressors are the events that we have stories about. And my comfort zone is what my brain's commitment is. So my brain doesn't want me to grow. My brain wants me to stay the same because that's predictable and safe. Right? And so cold calls for a real estate agent, a strategy meeting for the tech CEOs that I work with, preparing for a message for the pastors that we work with. There are these stressors that we develop these habit-based stories around that then cause avoidance because it's negative emotion. I don't like how that feels. So then I start numbing. So I eat, drink, binge, smoke, scroll, purchase. I mean, anything I'm doing, overwork out, anything I'm doing to avoid processing what I'm feeling is numbing, right? Mm-hmm. And the numbing gets me stuck, which then creates more stress because I'm not being productive. So
and
then
here we are on the wheel.
Yeah, and now I'm back on the wheel. So,
which is the catch-22 of really this whole personal development world is so much of the books and the, self-help material out there addresses the behavior, right? It addresses the thing that you're trying to stop doing to numb, whether it's you're eating too much so you have weight you don't want to have, or you're drinking, or whatever it is, purchasing. And so you're like, I'm gonna put myself on a budget, or I'm gonna go on a diet, or I'm gonna join a new fitness program. And we're not actually dealing with the root that's causing the numbing to begin with. So you stay, which was true for our life for years. We stayed in this perpetual, what we call the most destructive habit loop, where we just we do the thing, we commit to the program, we make a little bit of progress, we feel a little bit better, but then you stop. Exactly. Yeah. I feel a little better. So then I let my foot off the gas. Yeah. And then the only way I know how to grow again is to feel really frustrated about where I am again. And then the cycle starts over.
Well, I think, you're absolutely right about that. And I find that people in my, I also work with people who are stuck, but in a different way. They have something that they want to achieve, which is no different. Right. But also I think people make the goals huge, right? Yes. Where it's just this unattainable thing, you want to lose 136 pounds. Well, let's start with just losing a pound
in 6 months,
or 2 pounds or 3 pounds or whatever. And it's difficult to break everything down into small steps so that it doesn't create stress. I mean, this is what I encountered, right? It doesn't put you on that hamster wheel of, oh yeah, well, I feel really great now. I'm going to reward myself with a cake, not a slice of cake, a whole cake, right? Or whatever it is.
I would do horrible things to a cake right now. Well, and the thing that's interesting is when we hyperfixate on one metric, I will make myself unhealthy in others in order to move that metric, right? So when we work with someone, like I work with a decent amount of tech CEOs, and often they've put on some weight because they spend most of their day sitting at their computer, right?
Yeah, and they're stressed about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so we start talking about what would need to be true. And they all want to lose weight, have the six pack, have the big guns. They want to be the Bezos of tech, right? And the thing I ask them is, well, how many days a week do you eat food you cook? So let's not even start with a weight loss goal. Yeah. Let's start with consistency around nutrition. Like all the things that we obsess over in our life are all lag indicators, not primary indicators. Yep. So weight loss is a culmination of an adequate metabolic deficit created by your nutrition and movement, right? So that's a very fancy way. That's a very fancy way of saying weight loss is a byproduct of eating quality food and moving your body. Right. So let's measure consistency.
Like you said, the weight gain is the end result, but you didn't get there overnight.
Yeah.
It's been layering on these things over and over and over again. And, you know.
So the commitment is to create consistency in the behaviors that would bring about the outcome I desire. And then when I don't want to do that, now we've identified some of those being things, like whether that's a self-worth issue, whether that's a limiting belief about yourself, a core origin story about how you relate to those things. So
so many of those stories have to do with there's not enough time. That's like one of the biggest core ones.
Well, just even fundamentally, there's just not enough, whether that's not enough of me, not enough time, not enough money, not enough resources. Scarcity is the killer of most of our dreams.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And not just around food, around everything.
Yeah.
You know, like and scarcity mindset is not a productive mindset. So let's talk a little bit about your programs that you have developed now that we know what your focus is. So, what is the name of your coaching business?
Yeah. So our company is called Axios Coaching.
What does Axios mean?
Yeah, great question. It's one we get often. So we chose the word Axios. It's actually Greek for worthy. And in our background within the church, there's a lot of symbolism and like a lot of deeper meaning in understanding the Greek. And so that was kind of what that came from. And we chose that word worthy because that was such a transformative mindset shift for us in our journey, is believing that we were worthy of the investment. We were worthy of the work that was required to change our life.
Nice.
And that is a message we want to bring to every single person we work with, whether they go through one of our courses, whether they hear us speak, whether they work with us one-on-one, whether it's a couple we're coaching. Like that is the core of what we want people to hear and understand. And out of that understanding of worthiness, you start to understand how much more expansive and powerful and capable we really are.
Yeah, I love that worthiness, because I think a lot of people are like, you know, worthy of investing, whether that's time, whether that's money, whether that's energy, whatever it is. Like, you know, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have it. Well, what is going to be the cost to you if you don't invest time, money,
if you stay where you're
energy,
at currently?
Right. What's it going to cost you to stay where you're at? Your health, your job, right? Your relationship. It's a lot more than what you're going to invest to learn how to cook a proper meal for yourself or do some other sort of self-care thing. So I think that worthiness is huge, and a lot of people don't have a lot of self-worth. So that is amazing. Yeah.
Well, and I'm always paying. It's so interesting.
One way or another, you're paying.
Yeah, and I'm either going to pay in discomfort up front, like a workout hurts, right? Like I will pay in discomfort up front,
especially CrossFit.
Yeah, I will pay in discomfort up front, or I will pay with discomfort plus interest later. Right. So like, and I want to choose when. I want to choose when I pay. So like, we have a rule in our marriage. We would much rather have the uncomfortable conversation now than have a very uncomfortable one later. Right. So,
or not one at all. And then it gets to the point where you can't even have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Cool. So Axios, and then do you have a certain methodology? I mean, you've talked about how you approach things with people and stuff like that. Do you have a program or a methodology or something that you've created or
Yeah. So we have a curriculum right now. We're in the process of writing the 2.0 of that, and then a 1.0 of a very stress specific for knowledge workers course. So people that work in like real estate and tech. Mindbox is the curriculum we have right now. And the whole idea of that is Mindbox is for your brain, what the gym is for your body. So we help you train your brain. Yeah. So
that's why we have a podcast called Train Your Brain.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So Mindbox covers stress at a very high level, and then gets into a very specific way we teach people how to set goals. So
more from this understanding of who I need to be versus what I need to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So we really start to tackle, how do you run your life on diesel instead of rocket fuel, right? Like this slow burning thing that's designed to go the distance, as opposed to something. So many of us set goals fueled by rocket fuel, and they go up quick.
Yeah.
And then
it's effective.
It's effective. Yeah. And then they burn out real fast, right?
And it's in an explosion.
So
it's like eating that cookie. It tastes so good going down. You have all this energy, and then you're like, poof. You're like a 3-year-old. It's like you just crash. Boom.
Yeah. You ate a stimulant, not food.
Right.
So Mindbox is designed. It's largely designed for people in the gym space. We have a huge heart to serve people that were where we were. That being said, the principles that we teach in Mindbox are universal and be helpful for anyone who feels stuck.
Yeah.
So all of our 1.0 curriculum, regardless of where it's pointed, is helping get unstuck. So the knowledge worker side is going to be based on getting off the hamster wheel and getting water back in your sponge. And then 2.0 is creating a meaningful life. So this mixture of purpose, fulfillment, and adventure. And in the middle of that Venn diagram is a life that's worth living. It's a meaningful life, one that is enjoyable.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
You're on my podcast.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Who knew? So we're working on that curriculum right now. I'll be recording that this summer. So like I said, we have one curriculum right now, and then we will have at least 3 by the end of the summer, as we really feel like now that we've been through another evolution, now that we're really finding our home within this content, we feel like we can knowledgeably speak to it. So in the past, we would be throwing out stuff just because we felt like we needed to throw stuff out, and really felt like an evolution for us was to pause and make sure we had integrated the principles and the tools. And then from that level of integration, record content and prepare to teach it. So we aren't doing a ton of external stuff this summer because it's been a lot of like upgrading for ourselves. We have a rule that we don't profess what we don't possess. We don't speak to things we haven't practiced. And so, So, we're really excited. It's not the best marketing thing to say, hey, wait for this fall. But I also know that this content's going to be highly impactful because it has drastically impacted our life over the last year as we've really integrated it at a deep level. So
cool. So if somebody is interested and resonates with your story, and the multifaceted places from, where you came from and how you evolved and where you are now. And they're interested in Train Your Brain and Mindbox. So Train Your Brain is your podcast, correct? Right. Okay. Yeah. We can put a link to that in the show notes. How would people get in touch with you the best way? And, if they're interested in your programs, how would they? I know you said wait till fall, but we don't want to do that.
No.
Yeah, no.
No. I'm saying we'll have more stuff this fall.
We'll have more. Gotcha. So our 1.0 Mindbox course is already up and live. That's available for purchase right now. So that link for our link page that has all of our most important links will be in the show notes. I can give that to you. And then if people are interested, there is a package within the course page where you can purchase the course plus some one-on-one sessions. So it's a great place for people to start if they haven't been exposed to this type of coaching before, to see if that will be a good fit for them.
And is that on your website?
That's on the course page itself. That will be linked in the...
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. There's a couple different packages listed on there. And then for those that are really interested in true one-on-one ongoing coaching, we work with people for a minimum of 6 months. We do deep work with people. We get after stuff. And so that is more of a long form process. And we're very choosy about who we take on in that type of coaching capacity, because we bring a lot to the table. So we work both with individuals and with couples and teams even.
So would that be like a discovery call or something to sort of just see like, hey, are we a good fit? And I totally believe in that. I think that's great because you might, the 6 months is a sizable commitment. So you want to make sure that it's a good fit both ways, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's important for there to be a good fit for the commitment on both sides.
Right.
Yeah. So that, if you are interested in scheduling a discovery call, that link will be also on the link in the show notes.
Cool.
And then one other thing we do often is speak to. So if you have people listening to this who have teams that could use help getting unstuck,
oh, gotcha. Yeah,
maybe they're seeing burnout throughout their culture.
Yeah, that's huge.
We speak digital. I was with a team digitally in Atlanta last week. So we do digital stuff. We do in-person stuff. We are on a mission to help more people get unstuck. Yes. So whether we do that through coaching or speaking, we don't really care. We're really honored to be able to help people create a life that matters and that's full of meaning. Yeah.
I love that. I'm glad that we're all on the same page in that regard. I mean, and I think, the more that we can do as coaches to, assist people on having, lives that they feel more committed to and worthy of, I think that, it's going to raise the universal vibration and make the world a better place. How's that? That's not much of a goal at all, is it?
No, not at all.
Well, I'm really glad that we're in this mission together. And Brittany and Ed, thank you so much for being on the show today. I mean, we could go on and maybe we'll have you back in the fall when you get your 2.0 out there and some new insights or whatever. But thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you do. I think it's really important. And I loved hearing about your journey. And I know that it's going to resonate with a lot of my listeners out there. So thank you so much. And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for having us, Sue.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Life Worth Being. I hope you found it fun and inspiring. And to avoid a bad case of FOMO, please be sure to click that subscribe button. If you love what you heard today, please share it with a friend and then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and return the love with a wonderful review and 5-star rating. It would truly mean the world to me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and on my website. Links below in the show notes. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week for more fresh insights on awakening a life worth being.